Okay, hello everyone. So to start off with today's lecture, I'd like to answer some of your questions from last week's lecture on the strategies to manage deforestation, specifically the strategies on reforestation and protected areas. Okay, so the first question, how do we stop the deforestation of the Amazon? Sad face. Yes, I think this is a very serious issue. I'm sure many of us feel very helpless in terms of how we can stop the large scale destruction of the Amazon. So I think these are three ways that I have researched and come up with, right? Of course, it may seem to be really very minute for an individual that we may not make as much difference as we would like, but I believe that if more of us are able to do this, then maybe we can make a change together. Okay, so three ways. Number one, change consumption habits. So we know the top reason for deforestation in the Amazon is cattle ranching. So really, I guess one way to stop it is to reduce or to eliminate beef consumption. Actually, Singapore also imports beef from Brazil as well. Brazil is the world's top exporter of beef. So really, the top way I believe is to reduce or, if you can, totally stop eating beef. Okay, and then other ways is also to reduce the use of paper and wood products. So changing our own consumption habits, if it's done on a large scale, it can help to reduce the need for deforestation, right? Other methods, number two, sorry, is to challenge firms, right? Challenge firms to source ethically and not to source supplies from deforested areas of the Amazon. These include fast food companies like Burger King, McDonald's, and all, right? We should, of course, hold these firms accountable to where their sources are coming from, and they should not be sourcing from deforested areas of the Amazon. Last one, political pressure. I think education is important. It's also important to support campaigns which pressurize the Brazilian government to better protect the Amazon, because we know, if you watched the Vox video last week, we know that the main reason why deforestation has increased in 2019 is because of the change in president, the change in politics, which emboldened many people to start clearing land in the Amazon again. Okay, so therefore, politics is very important, right? If the government has political will to stop deforestation, then really it will make a huge difference. Okay, second question. Why do the protected areas still allow for controlled removal of trees? If the main purpose of protected areas is to achieve long term conservation of nature, trees shouldn't be removed in protected areas. Yes, so this reason is usually because protected areas are also trying to protect the economic livelihoods of indigenous people without destroying the forest. So usually the scale of removal of trees must be very small, right? It's part of the sustainable use of the forest. Sometimes you cannot entirely stop any activity in the protected area, especially if there are indigenous people living in the area. Because if you don't allow them to take any resources from the forest, then how are they going to survive, right? So usually that is the reason why in protected areas there is still some controlled removal of trees. It's really to protect the livelihoods of indigenous people. But I want to add that different protected areas have different regulations. So, for example, as mentioned in the Vox video, right, in the Brazilian Amazon, there are different types of protected areas. One type is called the strict reserves. So, strict reserves means that in this reserve is 100% reserve, right? It's really no activities at all. So no business activities at all in this strict reserve. And they also have a sustainable use reserve where they allow some form of economic activities, but these activities cannot destroy the rainforest. So some activities are things like Brazilian nut harvesting. So you're just taking the nuts, but you're not cutting down the trees. Right? So in that sense, you don't destroy the rainforest, but you can still extract some resources from the forest. Okay, so there are actually different types of protected areas as well, with different degree of use of forests allowed in the protected areas. Okay, next question. Palm oil comes from trees too. So does palm oil plantations help to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? Is this a balance between economic growth and climate change mitigation? Okay, I think this is a very good question, right? So I would like you to also consider where the palm oil is coming from. So if there's deforestation to clear land for oil palm plantations, actually I don't think that this is a way of mitigating climate change because number one, deforestation alone releases a large amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, especially through the slash and burn technique. And even after you clear the land, right, and you grow the oil palm, studies have shown that palm plantations only absorb 20% or less of the amount of carbon absorbed by an intact tropical forest. So a plantation can never absorb as much carbon dioxide as compared to a tropical forest. And a plantation is never as biodiverse as a rainforest. Okay, so if you are going to clear the forest for plantations, I still think that it is going to cause great damage to the environment in terms of biodiversity and also in terms of the ability of the forest to store carbon. Okay, however, I think yes, this could be a balance if there is limited clearing of forested land to grow oil palm. So, if, for example, the palm oil plantations, right, is not really coming from deforested land, but rather you're growing it on land that is not used in the first place, but it's not deforested land, then possibly yes, you can achieve economic growth without having to destroy much of the forest. Okay, this is the last question. So I understand that deforestation has large implications environmentally. Reforestation and protected areas help manage this issue. But I get the point of view of the people involved in agribusiness too, because I don't think that these strategies could drive economic development to a rate similar to if deforestation were allowed for more economic opportunities. So my question is, how can these strategies play a part in coercing people to not participate in deforestation, especially those environmentally oblivious people like the farmer in the Vox video? I think this is a great question, right? There is indeed a tension between protecting the forest and promoting economic growth. And yes, if you allow deforestation to go on, definitely it can help to boost the economy. Okay, so then how then do we play a part to coerce people not to participate in deforestation? My own view is that firstly, there must be education of the impacts of deforestation. So impacts could be things like global warming and so on. So there is a need for people to understand why protection of forests is important. Okay, but at the same time, you can educate all you want, but some people do not. They continue to ignore the science behind climate change and so on. So therefore, education alone is not enough. It's also important to have active enforcement of protected areas. There must be severe penalties to those who conduct illegal deforestation in order to send a strong message that these areas are protected. We are not supposed to touch them or use them for economic development. Enforcement is very important. The reason why deforestation has increased in 2019 is because the enforcement is now weakened under the new president, and therefore people are more emboldened to start clearing forests even in the protected areas. Whereas in the past, they don't do that because in the past there was much more active enforcement of protected areas. Okay, so enforcement is very crucial. And lastly, I think it's also important to provide alternative means for people to make a livelihood and to benefit economically. So if you're not allowing people to clear the forest for plantations or whatever, right, that means you need to also provide alternative means for people to gain a livelihood and to benefit economically. In the Vox video, the farmer that also said that agribusiness is one of the rare things that work in the Brazilian economy, which is why so many people are involved in agriculture in Brazil because it's one of the few sectors which are working in the economy. Right. So if you want people to stop clearing forest land for agriculture, then there must be a means, an alternative means for them to gain their livelihood. So it could be, for instance, the use of technology to increase productivity so that they do not have to clear more land, but rather they can boost productivity within the land that they have, or it could be to develop other economic sectors so that people do not have to turn to the forest in order to gain a livelihood and so on. Okay, so many times I think the protection of tropical forests is not just limited to the forest. It also involves other parts of the economy and so on. Okay, so today's lecture we'll learn more strategies to manage deforestation.